Hello, I'm Sally Pointer. It's been ages since the last instalment on how to build a warp weighted loom. Like a lot of people, I got a bit flummoxed when we went into lockdown and everything went on the back burner for a while. But the loom is finished, I've got it inside the house now, and I'm about ready to try a test warp. This is going to be a very small warp, just to check that everything's working. But before I can set up the warp, I do need to make sure I've got a few bits of equipment ready. And the most important thing for a warp weighted loom is something with which to weight your warps. Now the warps are going to be the threads that hang down the front, and I need loom weights. Now I'm really lucky that our excellent friends at Potted History, that's Graham Taylor, have made me these lovely weights. So that saved me having to build a kiln in the back garden and all the rest of it. And these ones are going to do really nicely. They're quite heavy, they're probably 400 or 500 grams, I haven't actually weighed them, but that's about what they feel like. Now it's worth remembering that loom weights come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and if you're making a loom which is going to be used in a situation where you're portraying a particular place in time and even in space, then you might need a particular shape of loom weight. So for example, the very oldest Neolithic ones tend to be quite large, they're quite oval, a bit like a loaf of bread I always think they look, with a hole through the top. As you get later into the Bronze Age, they tend to be more subrectangular. You get triangular weights like this, or pyramid weights if you like. Going into the Roman period, the Viking weights tend to be round. That's not fixed, don't take my word for that. It's very easy to look up though. If you've got a particular interest in a particular time or even region, then you can look up what the right shape and weight of loom weight is for that period. These ones though, Graham's very kindly made me to be nice and functional, generic enough for the teaching work that I do. And if I do need to represent a very specific place, then we'll adjust and we'll get some different weights. Now, they've got a hole through them already, but even in clay, that's going to be rough on the inside. We don't want to tie our warps into a rough hole that could cut them. So what we're going to do is take some string, and this is just thick, heavy garden twine type thing, and I'm going to make some ties for my weights. Now I'm just going to, let's take that out of the ball, wind this around my arm a few times, then I'm going to cut this down into nice manageable pieces. It's quite thick cordage for these snips, but we will get there. And all I'm going to do with my piece of string, poke it through the hole, that bit will go easily. Make sure I've got a nice space on the top. Simple overhand knot, round around, tuck it through. That's what we're going to tie our warp threads through later. So I'm going to set those up, so I'll have a row of those ready to be used. The exact number you need will depend on how wide your warp's going to be, so I'll just set these up so they're ready. The other thing we're going to need to set up our warp are some weaving tablets, because we're going to do a tablet woven header. Now mine are made of wood, they're rather beautiful things to use. You can use squares of playing card, bits of cardboard, bits off the side of old milk cartons. There are other ways to do it, but in a moment that's what we'll be using. And I'm also going to need thread. So I've had an order through from Jameson's of Shetland, who spin very beautiful weaving yarns. These are singles, so they're only a 1-ply thread, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that. There's that. They're quite thin, quite tightly twisted, fairly strong. And one of the ways that you can tell whether it's going to be strong enough to make a warp is just try one of them on your weight, and will it hold? Yeah, I wouldn't trust that a lot, but that's definitely holding. And there's going to be a bundle of these hung on to the weight. But if your thread that you're planning on using for your warp won't cope with being suspended even briefly on your loom weight, it's probably too soft and too thin. Okay, So we're going to set up a tablet woven header, and I'm going to do that in 4 colours today to make it easy to see. I'm going to use an undyed cream, an undyed brown. What else have I got in my box? I've got a vaguely goldy browny colour, and I've got a dyed blue. So in total we've got 4 shades, which hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on. Now, quite a lot of you watching will have done tablet weaving before, and you might have your own favourite way of warping up. I'm going to show you the way I do it. It's probably not the most elegant way, but I find it's fairly foolproof. Now, I'm using 4 shades: blue, undyed brown, undyed white, and a sort of beigey browny yellowy shade. And I'm going to do an 8 tablet warp. Quite often they're not very wide, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's all I need of those. Now, I find the easiest way is to warp these up as a pack. So I'm going to take my first thread. Now, actually, I've got a darning needle here, which might make life a little easier. Put a big needle on the end, you don't have to. Poke it through all of the holes. Just drop that off to the side. Now we'll do the next colour, which in this case is the undyed brown. I'm going to pop that onto the needle and make sure it runs through in the same direction. So that's 2 colours now on my pack of cards. Third one coming up next. So the undyed cream is our next one. Pop it onto a needle, pick up our pack of cards, again check that I'm going in the same direction as all the other threads, stick it through all of the holes, and that just leaves the brown, light brown shade. Alright, so I've got a pack of cards with 4 threads running through them. Now, I don't need to do a very, very large warp, so I'm going to make use of the pegs that are already on the loom. These are the ones that will hold the heddle bar in due course as a way of setting up my warp. I'm only doing a very, very short piece of tablet weaving. So I'm just going to tie that off on one side. Now the trick here is not to let these get tangled as you go, so take a moment getting everything arranged so you know what's going on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave 1 card behind, and I'm going to go around my other peg. I'm going to leave 1 card behind on this pass, and I'm going to go around my peg. And I'm going to leave 1 card behind. I'm going to go around my peg. And I'm going to leave 1 card behind. Don't worry about them being all jumbly and sitting in a higgledy-piggledy way at this moment. That doesn't matter in the slightest. All that matters is that you're setting up your strands with 1 set of cards for each length between the pegs. We're nearly there, just a couple more to go. 1 can go there. Watch out for twisty threads. I wasn't controlling that very well, and I didn't have a twist there. 1 more there. Break off your threads so that you can tie off gently just for the moment. And we're going to get these all arranged. Now, depending on the length of warp you're doing, at this point you might want to transfer these onto something else. But I'm going to run with this. I think I can make this work. I think what I'm actually going to do is transfer these up onto those, so when I do the actual warping up, I can see what I'm doing. This may not be making a lot of sense at the moment. Bear with me, we will get there. So what I'm going to do next is unlace my ends there, and I'm going to tie those ends together, just in an overhand knot. Now, I should be able to wiggle this off here. Take the header warp off there. This will come off here. Now, let me see if I can angle this up so you can see. There we go. Now, if I'm lucky, these will pop over the top there. Of course, these ends move, so that's all right. Having brought all of the tablets up onto the top beams, I now need to arrange them so that they'll make a sensible pattern, and also so that it'll be a nice firm header at the top. Now, there are really good tutorials out there on tablet weaving, so if my explanation doesn't work for you, please do check them out. There's always more than one way to do them. The way I like to arrange tablets is for one of them to sit in a herringbone pattern against the next one. So in this case, the threads are coming in to the top of this tablet, coming out the bottom. So for the next ones, they're coming into the bottom and going out the top. The next one, they're coming in at the top and going out the bottom. And this one, bottom to the top. That probably isn't the easiest thing to see on here, but it does help. I've also twisted them so that all of the threads going through this set of holes are white, and on the bottom corner, all of the threads going through the bottom set of holes are the blue ones. Now, because I've zigzagged them, and because of the way I dropped one off on each pass, the opposite corners actually alternate. I've got a brown, I've got, let's call it the yellow, it's not exactly yellow, so brown, yellow, brown, yellow, brown, yellow, brown, yellow, and the same happening on the other side. That's absolutely fine. We're not aiming for a pattern as such here, just a nice, stable setup. So what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to pass the warp thread through here. We're going to zigzag it across the pegs in the loom, which I know you can't see at the moment because I've arranged it, and then we're going to twist the entire packet of pegs, of cards, to lock those into place. Let me just see if I can arrange the camera. Okay, so I'm starting to set up the header band. What we're going to do is weave a little bit of plain tablet weaving, and then we're going to start dropping the warp threads off it. I'll do some of that with a wider angle lens in a moment, but for the moment let's have a look at how the tablet weaving is set up. So we've got our tablets all in a stack, we've got our warp thread in a ball. So let's just slide these forwards a little bit. Still see those? Good. So the way the tablet works is every time we twist them forwards, it opens another set of sheds up. So at the moment, can you see we've got the brown and the white threads largely showing at the top. If I twist forward a quarter turn, that's brought another set of threads up. You can see the dark blue creeping along behind. Put the warp thread through, tuck that into place, give it another quarter turn. I'm trying to do this so you can see what's going on. Now this time, can you see the blue threads have come up to the top? And this progression of different threads is what's creating this pattern. Now it is possible to thread in all sorts of interesting patterns. We're ending up with a very simple zigzag because we threaded it originally with all the blue in one corner, all the white in the other. So we're getting a zigzag of blue, that slightly muddled colour where the brown and the yellow together, then a white zigzag, another muddled colour, blue, the browns, the white, the browns. So nice zigzag. That's quite acceptable for an average header border. And eventually this will get lashed to the top bar with the warp threads hanging down. I just want to keep going for just a little bit longer to make sure I've got a really stable end. This can be sewn in later or trimmed off and darned back in. But I'm just going to keep going just for a few more stitches. So it means you can see what's going on. As I mentioned earlier, there are lots of tablet weaving tutorials on the net. I'll do some myself at some point when we're in a more focused frame of mind, but for now, a very, very simple border will do. If you prefer to use things like an inkle loom or a braid loom, you can do a very successful starting border using that as well. But a lot of archaeological textiles do use a tablet woven edge. I've got a little snarl there, that's it. Keep an eye on these. If you get tangled up, you don't get the right thing. Okay, so on this pass, I'm stopping with the thread coming out of the top. From here on in, I'm going to be starting to go down and using my pegs to warp up. So I'm going to set this at a bit further from the loom so you can see what's going on. This bit at the top, you probably won't get a close-up from here on in, it's going to be exactly the same each time. Turn the cards a quarter turn, pass the thread through, turn them a quarter turn, pass the thread back. So that's the same thing going on throughout. Okay, hopefully you can see enough of the loom now for the next stage. We just finished with the thread coming out of the top of the tablet weaving, so I'm going to take my usual quarter turn forwards, change the shed, bring the thread back through, change the shed. Now at this point up till now we've gone straight back up through the top, but now I want to use this to make my warp threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pegs that are already on the loom as my warping pegs. I'm going to go around this one, I'm going to go around this one, I'm going to go around the bottom one, and then I'm going to follow the same direction that I went, coming back around to the top, and I'm going to take my next stitch. And that's given me 2 warp threads. I'm going to turn that one forwards, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Just going to follow the path of the previous threads. And there, up to the top. Now this is going to give me a plenty big enough warp, for the size of test fabric I want to do. I don't need a hugely long warp for this. If I was doing something really, really long, I could either use extra pegs, and I have got holes for extra pegs, so a few extra pegs put in, which means I could zigzag back and forth, or I could set it up with a proper warping frame outside. I could even use a tree. I'll try and find a picture of a tree being used as a warping frame for you. I've done that quite successfully over the years. Oops. Do watch out for your loom wiggling. So I've got 2, 4, 6 threads there at the moment. I think I'm going to do maybe 12 in this colour, and then I'm going to change colour. So I'm going to carry on and keep doing this for a moment, and I'll patch in that picture of warping around a tree just for a bit of interest, if I can find it, and then I will restart the camera when I'm on the next bit of the warping up, and you should have a bit more on here to be able to see what's going on at that point. Hopefully clear as mud so far. It's about half an hour later since you last saw me, and I'm nearly there. I've done a round of blue, round of the darker brown, the white, the yellowy brown, the white, the dark brown. Just finished at the blue, but I've run short of thread. I didn't run enough of my ball. But that's good because it gives me the opportunity to show you something else. With this test warp, I very deliberately kept everything quite open. I've been using a ball of yarn and going up one pass, tracing it the whole way. And that's going to give me quite an open work piece of weaving, which is fine. This is a test run, I wanted to try that. However, there is a way to work straight off the comb and do 2 threads at once. If I just pop this on the floor at the back of the loom, come up to the top, anchor the top part. Oh, make sure I've wound my cards on. Now if I pull that loop, can you see I'm now getting 2 threads coming through at once. Now it is a case of just following that, helps if that end's anchored, which I didn't properly, just easing that through until you can get it over the peg at the bottom. Come on. Right, that's the way. It's incredibly hard to do this with a camera on me because I keep trying to not be in the way of it. And now I've had 2 threads that have gone through at once. Now this is a test warp, so it doesn't matter. If I was doing a really important piece, I wouldn't mix the 2 methods. But for my very last few passes, I don't think that's a bad way of doing it. I'm going to bring the camera over so you can see the last bit close up. Now if you remember, I was doing 12 strands at a time, so 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got 2 more passes to go here. You might also notice that I've added a tie here. That's because as the warp has got bigger, the tension's changed, and where the tablet weaving is taking up, I've had to put a tie on the end here. I could also just run this around the back, added a loom weight. So I've put this in just to keep this up near the top. So this isn't the most elegant piece of casting on in the world, but it'll do to keep us going. So advance my weaving tablets, pat that into place, bring my loop through. So remember, this is 2 threads at once. I know I'm going off camera now, but I'm just trundling this around the different pegs. Just get my head in that. I probably did. Sorry about that. Down to the peg at the bottom. Just the tension. Forward once more. 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm up to 10 now. 1 more pass, and that should pretty much do us. With all of these things, there's more than one method of doing it. You find a way that works for you. There are some very good books on warp weighted looms, some of them easier to get hold of than others, as well as very active internet groups. Now can you see that so far the rest of these are all very widely spaced, but these last 3 passes you can see quite clearly that there's a denser packing of threads in there. I'm going to extend my weave along the end a bit to make it stable, so I'm just going to break off a bit on the end. Tablet goes forward, and the warp through. Now the warp has become the weft of this now. It's one of the fun things with using a tablet woven border. As far as the tablet weaving goes, the working thread is the weft. As far as our weaving goes, it then becomes the warp. Don't have to take this along too far, just long enough to make sure that the ends are stable. Now we're nearly at the end of today's video. What we're going to do in a moment, when this is as long as I want it to be, is I'm just going to lash this to the beam, and then in the next video, which I'm going to start work on tomorrow, that might be a few days before it makes it to the upload stage, I'll show you how to attach the loom weights, and then we'll start thinking about the heddles and actually doing some weaving. This is still a test warp. I'm not expecting this first piece to come out as anything in particular. It's really just so that I can see whether I need to do any adjustments to the loom itself. I might want to alter peg positions. I might want to change how, whether there are extra notches needed in the beams. Where did that loop come from? There we are. Clip off my ends. Make sure that's tidy. There's a little bit of differentials in tension in this bit. That doesn't matter at this stage. The only thing that we do need to do before we continue is right down at the bottom, on the bottom peg, and we need to make sure that we've stabilised the warp there. So I'm going to take the camera down to there, show you what's going on, then we'll come back up to the top and lash in, and we'll be done. So this is the very bottom peg of the loom. This is the bit where we were going around the bottom over the top to carry up to the top of the loom. And once this actually goes onto the loom properly, we want half of these threads to be on one set of weights, and we want half of these threads to be on another. So it's very important we separate them out. And this is the easiest time to do it, when we can use the fact that they go around the peg to do that. So what I'm going to do, one-handedly, because I can't get the tripod down here, is I'm going to put my piece of heavy string left over from setting my loom weights earlier around the bottom bit. I'm going to tie that off. I've already done the bottom piece. I'll just double check that that really has separated, and then I know that I've got two bundles, one at the front, one at the back. That will make a lot more sense later on. Very last part of today's video. What we need to do now is lash this to the top beam. Now at the moment it's slightly over where it needs to be, so I'm just going to unhook it from the end. I'm going to drop it every 2 minutes. Butterfingers at the moment, I really am. Probably would have helped if I'd started tying it in before I turned the camera on. Anyway, nice strong piece of linen thread, doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's strong. Line things up so that you know you're more or less central. In fact, if it helps, let's just use the tie off the end here. Let's put a rough tie around the end just to take the tension off it. Hello cat, it's one of my cats whispering in the background. And what I'm going to do now is just sew this going round and round. What are you doing, cat? I think it's just disappeared into a cupboard at my feet. And I'm just going to sew this to the beam. Now, the more evenly I can do it, the better. But again, I'm not going to worry too much with this one, because it really is a test run, and actually, whilst I would never suggest to anybody else that they're sloppy about things, for me, because I use these in teaching, sometimes putting things on a bit rough and ready, the way an absolute beginner might do, actually tells me more about whether this is going to work nicely than if I apply all of the things I've learned from doing it wrong lots and lots of times over the years. So I want it to be functional, but I'm not too worried about it being pretty in this instance. Right, when you get to the end, let's make sure that it's secured. Don't have to do anything terribly fancy. What have I done with my slips? Get that bit off. That can now come off. We don't need this bit, so those can be clipped out of the way. That can be clipped out of the way. I'm going to put things down that the cat's not sitting on. So what we've ended up with are our warp threads. There's a few odds and ends that will be clipped off later as well. Our warp threads hanging down, our header tape, just jiggle into place, which gives us a solid footing to start the weaving against. Later on, as it needs it, you can roll the weaving up, and the peg on the end will stop it rolling down. For the moment, we're not at that stage. We're going to want our work, our weaving hanging down nice and firmly. That will do us for now, and tomorrow I'll start filming how to put the weights on and how to get it ready to actually weave in. This is going to give us quite a narrow piece of weaving. I'm going to try and keep it quite open work. It's going to be very tempting to bring it in tight, in which case it's only going to be that thickness, but I'm going to try and leave it nice and open and airy, and the width of this. and it's just for us to see how our mini loom's doing. Thank you for watching. I know that was a bit long-winded, but it's a slow process setting up the header tape. Should go a lot faster once we get into the fun bits. Bye for now.